Who we got here, guys? Who we got here? We're gonna go into this deep dive with the Kings real quick. Who we got? I think Georgia avenges the loss.
I think Georgia gets the rematch. What you think, Matty
I'll
Ice?
say I was going to take Georgia too. So, but I have
So that means
very little
Alabama's winning
experience.
by 30.
Yep.
Alabama's winning by 30. We all went Georgia, so Alabama's winning by
Georgia
30.
about to get them boys tonight.
I got to think they do. I got to think they do. We were talking as we were welcoming our good buddy Matt George in here for the first time in a long time.
Yeah,
Host,
man.
of course, of the Locked On Kings podcast. You're a Raider fan, right?
I am. I am a frustrated, longtime frustrated Raider fan who found a beacon of light when John Gruden decided to step down. So it became easier to be a Raiders fan midway through this season. Then, of course, them making the playoffs. It's always exciting when one of my teams makes the playoffs because it doesn't usually happen too often.
Yeah,
And
about
are
to
you just
say,
gonna? Sorry, Casey, my bad. But when because your favorite baseball team's about to move to Las Vegas too, I'm sure. So
hmm
are you just gonna be a Las Vegas guy now?
I
Like
I might as well be. I've never been to Vegas, so
Vegas
I'm down to
Mike,
try it out.
Vegas Matt. We'll call you Vegas Matt.
Bring my bottles of McQueen to Vegas. We'll see how I
There
party.
you
we'll
go. All
do
right.
that. But I was gonna say, Matt, you're definitely You probably seen this. Let me guess. You were about 13 in 2002.
12, I think.
Well,
Yeah, quick math. Yeah, 12.
that was the last real time the Raiders were in the playoffs. I'm not going to count
Super
the year
Bowl.
Derek
Yeah.
Carr got hurt because they didn't have a
Oh,
chance.
what the hell? I'm terrible at math. 2002, I was 8. What
Oh
the hell
my!
am I talking about?
So do you don't even really remember the Raiders being in the playoffs like that?
I remember a Super Bowl party where when the Raiders got their asses handed to them by the Buccaneers, and the one
Mm.
thing I remember from that party is everybody at that party who were Raiders fans at the time, before the game was over, going outside for a football game because we didn't want to watch the rest of it. That's what I
That
remember
was
most.
bad. Yeah, that
Well,
was
speak for
bad.
yourself.
Yeah. Well, bad for Raider fans. Bad for Raider fans for sure. Unfortunately, Matt does not host the Locked On Raiders podcast, though I'm sure it is out there. If you look, Matt's the host of the Locked On Kings podcast. James Ham just spent a solid 60 minutes. Well, destroying the Kings, and we all have the same reaction. It's Arthur, right? Is that
It's
baby?
Artie. Can you hear him? Yeah.
Yeah.
Baby Arthur. That's how we feel every time. That's how
Oh,
we're all going to sound in about 4 hours when Cleveland is playing Sacramento. This is a bad matchup for them. This is just bad. 10 games under 500, 42 games in the season. None of us, I know Kenny and I certainly didn't. James didn't. I don't think you did either. We couldn't have predicted this.
Nah, and yeah, that is my son Arthur in the background. If anybody can hear, and he's still crying from having to sit through that game last night. And it's
oh,
okay because the two of us were crying together watching that disaster of a performance that unfortunately has become far too common for this team this year. And 10 games under 500. You know, I was listening to James Ham, and I thought I was going to be the super depressing one, but James brought the mood down for me, so I could just carry on riding that pathetic, sad little wave. But the
That's
one
it.
thing that James said that that really resonated with me is he was talking about like it's just the same cycle over and over and over again. And I'm not going to use my definition of insanity line because I don't want to get booted off this program by Damian Barling. But I will say this Sacramento Kings organization, regardless of who owns it, regardless of who's running it, who's coaching it, who's playing for it, this organization does the same damn thing over and over and over and over again. And I put out on Twitter today that there are really two things during this 15-year playoff drought that the Kings haven't tried. Number one is an all-in mortgage the future type trade that is a massive risk for a big name to try something, which you could argue is what the Kings did when they traded for Chris Webber back in the day. And we know it worked out, but there's a massive risk to that, of course, and could set you back even further than the Kings are right now. And number two is a full-on hard rebuild where you don't look for shortcuts. You don't try and jump 2 rungs up the ladder. You hire a coach and you're going to stick with that coach long-term who is the right fit, not the guy that's going to get you. What was Vlade's line when he fired Yeager and hired Luke Walton? Yeager took us as far as we were going to go, and now we're bringing this guy to take us the rest of the way. Like the Kings have failed to execute any kind of rebuild, even though they've tried, it feels like a million times over this 15 season, soon to be 16 season playoff drought. And they haven't tried a swing for the fences move. So really, those are the only two options available for Monte McNair. I know which one he's going to try for.
Since we're both on the same page, I think with that one, we think he's going to try swing for fences. Are you on board with that? Do you think it's time for a tear it all down? Get everybody out of here, reset?
See, I'm actually going to do a Locked On Kings podcast kind of with a hypothetical what if. And there are so many questions that this organization has to answer, and more importantly, has to answer correctly in order for a tear it down rebuild to actually work. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have to stick with it. Ownership has to hire the right guys. Will Monte McNair survive making a move like that, or will you change general managers in the middle of it and basically hit a mild reset again? If you have a year like the Kings did a couple of years ago where it looks like the team is overachieving, you don't try and fast forward by making some ridiculous moves and try and force things only for them to fall apart again. Like I personally am against a full-on rebuild because I don't believe that I don't have any faith in it working. I don't have any faith in the organization getting so many things right. I don't think the Kings are going to get the return that they would like to get in a rebuild scenario, which more than likely means you're trading De'Aaron Fox. I imagine in that scenario, you're keeping Tyrese Halliburton because he's young and he's someone that you can build around. So I like the idea of that. But there's just so many things that have to be executed and executed correctly to even get a good rebuild started versus I've clamored on this show for a while. I have no idea what that deal is. That deal might not even exist, but I'm ready for Monte McNair to massively swing for the fences when it comes to a trade. I don't know if that trade is Ben Simmons. I don't know if that trade is Domantas Sabonis. You know, Shams released an article on The Athletic today. The only mention of the Kings was that they were interested in Ben Simmons, so nothing new there. But the Kings were not brought up in the Sabonis or Miles Turner sweepstakes. The Kings were not brought up in any kind of interest in what the Boston Celtics have. Like that to me is a concern. All those guys, all those big names out there, I want the Kings to be involved in conversations for, and I don't care about trading draft picks at this point.
Can you imagine being Monte McNair sitting in your office somewhere, sitting at your house, or sitting in your car with the idea of, no, it's okay. The house is on fire, but Ben Simmons is going to fix this all. I just have to wait it out. Imagine sitting on your hands because you think a guy who, I don't know, he certainly hasn't played competitive basketball. I don't even know if dude has played basketball, period, for the last several months, is going to be the guy who's going to change the trajectory of this franchise. I'm not against Ben Simmons, by the way. I'm not against a Ben Simmons deal. It better be right. I'm not against it. I'm just fascinated at this. Seems to be Ben Simmons very literally seems to be the reason that perhaps not just Monte McNair, but the entire league is at a freaking standstill.
And D'Lo, you know, in a battle between the master and the protege, the master is winning. And what I mean by that is Daryl Morey. Monte McNair is from their Daryl Morey school of general managers and front offices with the time in Houston. We heard reports and read reports that the Kings have had interested in Simmons since this offseason. There were conversations between the two teams, and the conversation with Daryl Morey started with De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton, but I imagine it was De'Aaron Fox. And at the time, McNair said no. Morey's winning right now because with each passing day, each passing game, each passing month, the Kings look more and more desperate. Monte McNair gets more and more desperate. And suddenly, when we were refusing to even consider Fox and Halliburton in that kind of trade a couple months ago, now it's like, okay, yeah, you're probably going to have to include one of the two of them in addition to draft compensation. And there are some people, at least here in Sacramento, not who are running the team, but there are some people in Sacramento who support this team, who watch this team, who are ready to pull the trigger on that. So we criticize Daryl Morey for playing the waiting game. And look, he hasn't pulled anything off yet, so we can't give him praise because it hasn't worked quite yet. But in this case, if the Kings are really serious about getting Ben Simmons, they're losing leverage with every single loss. And at the same time, pieces like De'Aaron Fox are losing value, although only slightly. I'm not saying that teams are going to look at De'Aaron Fox now as significantly less value because of the struggles of this Kings team and the struggles that he's had so far this season, because he's turned it around recently. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't see how the Kings get Ben Simmons without trading De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton. And to your point, maybe short term, does that get you better? Probably. Does that get you so much better that you're now vaulted into legitimate playoff conversations for years to come, that's where it gets scary.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not completely against trading for Ben Simmons, but I am completely against trading for Ben Simmons and moving on from Tyrese or De'Aaron Fox. To me, that doesn't make any sense.
Then you're not getting Ben Simmons. Like that's where we're at. You're not getting him, which
I
I'm
agree.
okay with.
I agree with you, and I'd move on. Like to me, it defeats the purpose to move on from one of those two to bring in Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons.
I also think the Kings would be bidding against themselves.
Yeah.
Like, who else is going to give up players of that caliber? Well, I maybe not fair to put but who else is going to do that? I don't think another team is going to do that.
Nobody, absolutely nobody. And if you're, and then it's a situation where if you are willing to move on from one of those two, this is, I guess, where it is a little bit of a slight. You can do better. Like, if you're willing to move on from one of those two, the ceiling should not be Ben Simmons. It should be calling. I'd call everybody in the league and say, these guys are on the table. What's your best offer? And then take a chance that way. So, like I said, Simmons with those two, which I hear you, Matt. It's a pipe dream, but with those two, if you're giving up 2 unprotected first rounds or 2 and 1, whatever the case may be, but adding Ben Simmons to those two, I think that's something that I can get my head around a little bit more than moving one or both for Ben Simmons. That don't make sense to me.
So you said one thing there, Casey, that I think is key. You can do better if you're looking to get value for De'Aaron Fox. You absolutely can, but will you? I think that's the point. And Monte McNair has been in trade conversations. There are opportunities for Buddy Hield trades, Harrison Barnes trades, Marvin Bagley trades. We don't know how much, we don't know what their value is, but there have been opportunities out there. And at the same time, too, you've had 2 trades with the one with the Milwaukee Bucks, the sign and trade for Bogdan Bogdanović that fell through. The Buddy Hield trade to the Los Angeles Lakers that we all know fell through. You can have all these possibilities. The problem is nothing's happened yet. And I'm not necessarily saying you trade De'Aaron Fox or trade Tyrese Halliburton or trade someone for the sake of trading someone. But at the same time, too, it doesn't surprise me at all that at least fans on social media that I'm seeing, I'm here, you guys talk about on the show, Monty has to do something. Like, he has to do something, and he has to do something that is actually going to make a difference, which is why I honestly, like, it sounds dramatic, but in my mind, you have to do one extreme or the other. You have to tank or you have to go for it. You have to take a risk or you have to completely sell. Little minor moves. Like, I like Miles Turner a lot. Does trading Miles Turner or getting Miles Turner for like Harrison Barnes and something or another, does that make this Kings team so much better that now we're feeling better? Maybe a tiny bit, but probably not in the grand scheme of things. Maybe it more cements them as a play-in team, but what does that even mean? The point is actually making it out of the play-in and making it into the playoffs and looking like you belong there. And this team obviously doesn't look like they belong there. So you're not talking about marginal moves. And I know James Ham has talked about this a lot on your show. Marginal moves do nothing for the Kings. And if Monty is only able at this deadline to pull off marginal moves, he is going to be ridiculed, and rightfully so. Absolutely. And his job is in trouble. The fan base will turn on him. And more importantly, the fan base will do something that they really haven't done over the course of this, and they're already starting to over the course of this entire playoff drought, and that's check out. That's stop caring. That's become indifferent. Like, the one thing this organization has had for all 16 garbage seasons is a fan base that continues to support. I know the numbers weren't the greatest before the relocation era, but that fan base came back. They got excited. They've supported a team that has no business having the kind of support that they have after this long of a playoff drought. They've stuck around, and Sacramento, we know how passionate this fan base is. You lose that, and the Kings organization legitimately has nothing. Has nothing.
And real quick, Dan, I hear what you're saying, but moving. So let me ask you. You're saying they have to move Halliburton or Fox?
No, I'm not. I don't think they have to at all.
Because there's not. I say that. I ask because I think everything else is probably a marginable move. Moving Harrison Barnes is not getting you Ben Simmons. So it would be Harrison Barnes for Miles Turner, Harrison Barnes for Cam Reddish, I think a marginal move here or there, I think that's fine.
As long as you make several of them.
Yeah, if you
Don't make one, make
that's
several.
fine. I think what you get right now from having these guys together is so bad, and it's getting to the point where it's so toxic. Yes, just moving a couple of guys out of here will change at the very least a little bit what's going on here in Sacramento with this group. Like, it's that bad.
So I agree. If you're going to make a swing for the fences move, you do have to trade one of the two of them. If you are going to make a full-on rebuild move, I think you can hold on to both of them and just sell everything else and try and get value for everything else, as long as you are embracing the fact that the best case scenario for this team this year is getting as good of a draft pick as possible to add to this group.
Gotcha.
That's pretty much where I'm at with that. But in my desired scenario, to your point, Kenny, yes, De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Halliburton have to be moved. And like I said, I'm not rooting for either of them to be moved necessarily. I've gone back and forth out of who I'd choose. And the majority of the time, I'd pick Fox over Halliburton because of the history. But at the same time, I recognize Halliburton is one younger. His contract isn't necessarily an issue. Not that Fox's is yet. And on top of that, Halliburton has proven to be able to fit with multiple players and be able to complement multiple players. And De'Aaron, as great as De'Aaron is, he requires specific players around him, which, to his defense, the Kings haven't done a great job of surrounding him with, which was the same thing they did with DeMarcus Cousins. So, I mean, time in, time out, it goes back to the point of this organization just keeps making the same damn mistakes. And regardless of what, if they do go the rebuilding route and hold on to the two of them, like I think they possibly could do, I don't have faith in that working. I have the only opportunity that I see to have the best chance of success, I suppose, is taking a risk, trading one of the two of those guys, trying to get a proven commodity, mortgaging draft picks in the meantime, and giving fans a reason to show up and care about this team again. Because right now, there's no reason to pay attention to this group.
Matt George, host of the Locked On Kings podcast, with us here on Dealing with KC. Do you think the team's quit?
Sure as hell looked like it last night, didn't it? I mean, the fact that you got outscored, your starting backcourt, your stars of Fox and Halliburton were outscored by 13 from Ben McLemore and Anthony Simmons. Like that cannot happen. Like the Portland backcourt, if I was to tell you, hey, the Portland backcourt outscored the Kings backcourt, okay, that's reasonable if you're talking about CJ McCollum and Damian freaking Lillard. But once again, and to the surprise of absolutely nobody, like it used to be a joke. We used to kind of say, hey, isn't it weird? Like the Kings seem to always play bad and always lose when they're taking on a team that's not at full strength. They play better when a team's at full strength. That used to be kind of like a joke and tongue-in-cheek thing. Now it's just who this Kings team is. And like, truth be told, I know you guys have played audio on your show and I've still listened a little bit, but I've stopped caring and stopped paid attention to what De'Aaron or Tyrese or anybody is saying, even Alvin Gentry in post-game press conferences, because it's the same damn thing every single night with this team not changing anything, not backing anything up. I think De'Aaron said the other night, we still have something to play for. You've had something to play for 3 freaking years that this group has been together, the fan base mainly being that. Now with the introduction of the play-in over the last 2 years, you've had a gift thrown into your lap, especially with the state of the Western Conference, and you still can't prove that you belong. And like, it's frustrated me that, and I know they have a very difficult job to do, and I know they're trying to maintain interest as much as possible in the Sacramento Kings. Katie, Mark, Kyle on the broadcast, but it bothers me every single time they bring up the play-in. It bothers me. So the Kings are still very much in the play-in hunt. Yes, mathematically they are, and they will have a very good shot at making it because the West is such garbage. They'll have such a good shot probably until the very, very end of the season. But what I do is I look at this Kings team and I say, do they belong in any postseason conversation? And I use air quotes around postseason because I guess we include the play-in as postseason, but not playoffs. I don't know what that would mean for the playoff drought for the Kings in the history books. But I look at this team and nothing about this team suggests that they belong in any kind of postseason or playoff conversation. If this team, as of right now, were to make the play-in and be a 10th seed, they'd lose their play-in game probably by 20 points, and they'd be sitting on the couch watching the rest of basketball in May and June like they always are. So I kind of went on a tangent there.
You did. That was a good one.
Basically, like,
Kings folks are cleansing their souls today.
It's just the frustration of watching this team. Yes, they have absolutely quit. I mean, there's nothing about watching last night's game that tells me that this team hasn't quit. And at the same time, too, it doesn't surprise me that Simmons rattled off a 31-point game, because every single player on every single team licks their chops when they have an opportunity to play the Kings, because these guys are already excited to get big minutes when stars go down, because it's their chance to prove themselves, and they get their chance to prove themselves against the Sacramento Kings. That's like a field day. That is, and every single team comes into a matchup with the Kings. Players come into a matchup with the Sacramento Kings absolutely fearless, expecting to get theirs, because that's the reputation the Kings have around the league, and the eye test proves every bit of that.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It really is.
Can I mention something? Because I think we've all about had it with the Kings. They're going into a game against Cleveland tonight. It's just a matchup that I absolutely hate. Cleveland scored 81 against this team in the first half when the Sacramento Kings visited Ohio earlier this year. We're going to coverage of the college football playoff national championship coming up here in just a few minutes. Do you know who is on television right now? Andrew freaking Luck.
That's gotta be Andrew Luck.
Say that because I legit have not seen Andrew Luck since he left.
Nobody has.
Neckbeard is gone. Solid porn stash. Still making funny faces. He's standing next to RG3, so that's obviously I think someone loaned him a sports coat. It's everything you'd expect Andrew Luck's, what I think is Andrew Luck's first public appearance in 2 years to be. It's everything. It's that and more. I'm so irrationally excited to see Andrew Luck. I have not seen this man in years. I'm happy to see him. He looks ridiculous. He looks exactly like you'd expect. Like he's just retired and enjoying life. And that mustache is something.
It takes a special man to be able to pull off that mustache. And
not everybody could do it.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Neck beard gone, beard gone. Just the straight stash. It's marvelous. Yeah, just search Andrew Luck on Twitter. Do yourself a favor. Everybody search Andrew Luck on Twitter. And